Okay, so it's been a while since I've made videos. This this video is gonna be about MMM, misconceptions, rumors, and flat-out lies that circulate out there, media, internet, whatever. And I am going to debunk them. Some time ago, I signed up to MMM. There appears to be many misconceptions about what MMM is and who exactly is Sergei Mavrodi. Wikipedia, for example, falsely lists MMM as a Ponzi scheme and describes Mavrodi as a Russian criminal. Unfortunately, Wikipedia quotes articles that are written by correspondents uninitiated in the workings of MMM and thus being completely ignorant of what MMM truly is. It also quotes Russian articles written by even more clueless journalists that distort or downright make up news and present the man and his idea in a bad light. I need to correct this, just a second. Just a moment, folks. A little bit of technical difficulties. Okay. So, like I said, I am making this video to dispel many myths about MMM. I think what needs to be done is an account of how MMM came about and why it was shut down. The first myth that is continuously perpetuated is that MMM collapsed under its own weight as an unsustainable pyramid scheme. Somewhere down the line this will be debunked. Sergei Mavrodi is a Russian mathematician and a computer programmer. You know, he is a typical four-eyed nerd with an extraordinary mind. Back in the late 80s, he created MMM, and at the time it wasn't MMM that most people know it today. It was a typical mom and pop shop that sold computer hardware. Several years later, USSR collapsed, and the new power elites were to distribute among the masses giant former Soviet asset reserves. However, the new Russian elites were as incompetent as they were corrupt and quickly began using illegal and immoral tactics to make sure that those assets would be acquired by them and their close friends and families rather than the quote-unquote common folk. And Sergei Mavrodi anticipated the lawlessness and incompetence of the power elite, and in order to compete with them, and back then it was possible both in theory and practice, he created MMM Invest. Now, MMM Invest was issuing vouchers for the major former Soviet assets, like factories and mines full of strategic reserves. However, he quickly ran into bureaucracy and a slew of laws that both conflicted with each other and themselves. The problem was that he was trading securities, and securities were subject to regulations. And the demand for new securities that he issued were so great that Mavrodi needed to mint more securities, something that he legally could not do without Russian government approval. So after entertaining and deciding against the option of illegally printing more securities than by law he was allowed to print, he came up with a brilliant idea. And what was that idea? That idea was MMM, the way that we know it today. Instead of printing securities that are tightly regulated and are very difficult to place limits on, Mavrodi decided to use Mavros, a private currency that he himself made up and designed. Since they were nothing but product of his creation, he could easily make as many of them as he wanted to and price them as much or as little as he wanted to, and make as many or as few as he wanted to, and make as many as he wanted to, he did. He even sent order to factories that printed United States dollars, and later on those factories, some of those factories would actually forego minting US currency simply because they could print more Mavros. So, as of February 1st, 1994, MMM started selling Mavros and growing exponentially. This is where I want to debunk multiple myths and lies stated and posted about MMM. One of them was that MMM has collapsed due to its instability and insustainability. That lie has been repeated so much that it became a widely accepted gospel, and nothing could be further from the truth. When Sergei Mavrodi was being tried in court, it was testified under oath that from the very beginning, the Russian government has made many attempts to destabilize MMM and bring it to ruin. Again, Sergei Mavrodi says so, but it isn't Sergei Mavrodi's hearsay. It is a documented and openly admitted act. The second lie that is posted on Wikipedia, and I quote directly, it maintained a steady price growth of 1,000% annually, leading the public to believe its shares were a safe and profitable investment, end quote. Sergei Mavrodi, from the very beginning, has stated that Mavros, his own made-up currency, is not a security. There were never any guarantees whatsoever for profit. One cannot accuse him of deceit any more than one can accuse Walt Disney of deceit, leading me to believe that mice wear gloves and talk. Which brings us up to one more interesting fact. Sergei Mavrodi has never promised anyone anything. Neither current MMM nor MMM that was again destroyed by the government in 1994 ever had any contracts or obligations. You gave money without any promises or guarantees, just like people who gave you money when your Mavros appreciated give you money with no expectations or promises on your part. Pertaining to what I just said, there is still another lie. The lie that Sergei Mavrodi was incarcerated for fraud. He wasn't. He was found guilty of tax evasion, which is another much distorted story that begs for detailed examination. These four digressions aside, I want to go back to the point where MMM grew and grew. Eventually, Mavrodi had 1/3 of Russia's entire economy and untold tens of millions of devotees. The government could not simply ignore such a popularity of a self-made folk hero who, among other things, refused any and all contacts with it. The government, that is. It is then when multiple occasions of intimidation, harassment, and badgering began, one after another. Charges were attempted to be filed against MMM, but none stuck. Mavrodi never contractually obligated himself or MMM to do anything. Debunking this is simple. One simply has to present any kind of contractual agreement with Mavrodi's signature. Eventually, in a total act of desperation, Spetsnaz, which is Russian Special Forces, was sent to MMM headquarters to seize all of the company's assets by force. The story of 11 big trucks loaded with money and disappearing has long become a part of a Russian lore. The fate of these trucks is unknown to this day, and the question about the truck's load, i.e. money, has never been answered or even posed in court during Mavrodi's trial. It is only after that MMM has collapsed. It is only after that that Mavrodi had to be on the run from corrupt and unrestrained Russian government. Ask yourselves, how would your business survive if all of your liquid assets were suddenly and without any explanation seized? Would it survive? No, of course not. It would be a gross omission also not to mention that there were charges under which Sergei Mavrodi was incarcerated. As I stated before, despite many urban myths about him defrauding millions, he was never charged with fraud. He was charged with tax evasion. Now, most of you normal people think that he was told to pay taxes and simply neglected to pay them. That seems like a reasonable description of what tax evasion entails. Well, not in Russia. In Russia, Mavrodi paid taxes he owed, but according to the government, he paid them from the wrong source. Mavrodi did pay his taxes, just not from MMM, but from his other company that he also owned. The government was told that these are mistakenly forwarded funds that he needed to repay, and he needed to repay them again, and the old funds that were already sent there were promised to be returned. They never were returned, by the way. And as Mavrodi was being tried, there were 3 investigations conducted on whether he paid his taxes correctly. 2 of them were independent, and they found no legal misconduct. One last one was government organized, and that one agreed with imposed charges of tax fraud. As I said previously, government felt Mavrodi was a rising political figure with no visible pressure points and were desperate to neutralize him. So, to conclude this, Mavrodi was falsely incarcerated on fraudulent charges. He never deceived anybody, he never promised anything to anyone, and MMM did not collapse on its own. Any insistence otherwise is simply ignorance of the actual facts. In my later video, we will go over what exactly is MMM.